Hey guys, Brett Weiss here. Welcome to another video. I've been having a blast recently playing my Atari 2600 and shooting these Atari videos recently, but I got a different spin on the 2600 today. My top 5 most cinematic games for the Atari 2600. Cinematic 2600? Yes, the system I've been playing since 1977 when I went over to my friend's house and then friends' houses. And then in spring of 1983, when I got a console of my very own, I bought it for $10 from a friend at school. Yes, he had moved on to the ColecoVision. All right, guys. Now, Atari 2600 games, cinematic, these are judged not by cutscenes or voice acting, which would be preposterous because that's not a thing, but by atmosphere, pacing, storytelling through gameplay, and a sense of visual drama that made them feel like movies in 8-bit form. Again, relatively speaking. No cinematics like in modern games, but guys, hear me out. My top 5 most cinematic Atari 2600 games, 5 to 1, counting down, and let me know in the comments where I go wrong in this video, and let me know your favorite or your top 5 cinematic games for the 2600, or just your favorite. Be sure and leave me a comment below. Let's get to it. All right, guys, first up at number 5, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Yes, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Now, some of you might put this higher on the list because it is very cinematic for the console. Inspired by the blockbuster film, Raiders delivered one of the most ambitious multi-screen adventures on the system. Players had to collect and use items strategically, switch between inventory screens, and navigate a complex world. Concepts way ahead of their time. It required real thought, like playing through an interactive storyboard of the first film in the series. You explored temples, mesas, and dungeons, avoided creepy creatures, while searching for, what? You guessed it, the Ark of the Covenant. It was an epic game you could play using 2 joysticks. Yes, 1 player, 2 joysticks. It was created by Howard Scott Warshaw, a legendary Atari 2600 programmer, and a buddy of mine who I do see at conventions where we're guests periodically across the country. Howard Scott Warshaw also created E.T. the Extraterrestrial and Yar's Revenge, who you could argue have some degree of cinematic flair. But did they make the list? Hang on tight. This was a very ambitious game for a console that was basically designed to play simple action games, Pong games, and the like. Yeah, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Easy choice to make this list. Again, you might put it higher on it. Wouldn't blame you if you did. Now guys, my next choice at number 4 might surprise you a little bit. Moon Patrol. Yes, Moon Patrol. While technically a side-scrolling shooter, Moon Patrol is also a driving game, standing out for its sense of forward motion. It is a journey across a hostile alien moonscape with players shooting straight up and straight ahead at otherworldly enemies, dodging and jumping over rocks. You must dodge landmines as well. Yes, jump over them. The timing is very important in this game. Add a rhythmic soundtrack that is relatively faithful to the arcade classic, and you've got something surprisingly cinematic for the time and for a shooter of its era. The game is a simplified port of one of the greatest games of its era. Where's my Moon Patrol movie, guys? I would love to see a Moon Patrol movie. Guys, if you've never played the Atari 5200 version of Moon Patrol, it's even better than the 2600 version. It's definitely a more accurate arcade port. Yeah, the Atari 2600 version is blocky and it's flat compared to the arcade classic, but hey, like I said in the intro, it's all relative. It's actually a very good port as far as capturing the basic gameplay of Moon Patrol, and it does have a bit of a cinematic feel. I first played Moon Patrol when it came out, and I believe it was 82, I believe it was. I played it at the Land of Oz arcade when I was but a teenager. Absolutely fell in love with it. It's a great game that's still fun to play today. Next on my list is Solaris. Yes, Solaris. You guys may have seen this in a recent video I did of the best first-party shooters for the console, but it's also one of the most cinematic. A late generation release that pushed the 2600 limits, Solaris felt huge and looked gorgeous, at least relatively speaking. I'm gonna stop saying that, we get it. With the galactic map, planet landings, space battles, and rescue missions, it was the closest the 2600 got to something like Star Wars. It was even more similar to Star Wars than the Star Wars games, at least in terms of cinematic presentation. It delivered tension, scope, and drama, all with stunning execution. multicolored, non-flickering enemies, exotic sci-fi storylines, and 2 joystick control. Yes, like Raiders of the Lost Ark, you could use 2 joysticks to play this game. It had most everything a shooter fan could want. Unfortunately, it was released years after the heyday of the console, meaning a lot of Atari 2600 owners back in the day when millions of people were still playing the 2600 never played it. And today you can get it fairly cheaply, just card only. You can find it pretty cheap. Solaris for the 2600 at number 3, I definitely recommend it. Very cinematic game for the console. All right, guys, next up, it's another shooter, surprisingly enough, or you might be surprised. Atlantis, fantastic game. Few 2600 games felt as epic or as tragic as Atlantis, with a beautifully animated alien ships and defensive lasers firing from the depths of the sea. It played like a last stand sci-fi film. The ships flew back and forth across the skies, dropping down a little with each pass, creating Space Invaders-like drama. Yes, when I first played Space Invaders in 1978 and the ships were, working their way down the stream, I got a little bit of that vibe with Atlantis. As they pass, they get lower and lower. Super dramatic game. It's a haunting ending. The destruction of the city gave it rare emotional weight. Yeah, there's not a lot of emotion involved with the Atari 2600 as far as that type of emotion. Yeah, you get excited being your high score or whatever, but this kind of drama is rare on the console. It was more than a shooter. It was a pixelated war movie in motion. Not as deep or as good as the Intellivision version, which I do prefer. I love both, but the Intellivision version has a lot, like the mothership and on and on. But the Atari 2600 version is still an all-time classic and decidedly cinematic. Yeah, if you've never played Atlantis, rush out today and get you a copy. It's simply a great game. Now guys, you might be ahead of me on this one. You might have already guessed. It could only be Pitfall II: The Lost Caverns, one of the most sophisticated games for the console of the original releases back in the day. With sweeping vertical environments, real-time background music, thanks to a custom audio chip, and an open world feel, Pitfall II told its story through exploration. It captured the feel of a pulpy adventure film, danger, discovery, and a quest for treasure in a way few 2600 games could match. You could swim, float across chasms via hot air balloons, jump over scorpions, and much more. There were new enemies, such as eels and condors, but you could no longer swing on vines. That was the one setback with Pitfall 2, for me at least, that you could no longer swing on vines. I mean, Pitfall Harry, that's what he does. He swings on vines. That kind of, still, it's a great game. Slightly less cinematic without swinging across vines, but still, super cinematic. Not relative to the console, because I don't say that anymore, but super cinematic for the era. Anyway, music plays throughout the game, which is very unusual for the system. Definitely a rarity for the console. It's a great sequel to one of the greatest games of all time. And indeed, Pitfall 2 is one of the greatest games of all time in any era. It's amazing. If you've only played the first Pitfall, you owe it to yourself to take a deep dive and play some Pitfall 2. It's amazing. All right, guys, be sure and let me know in the comments what your favorite cinematic games for the console are. And be sure and hit that subscribe button and comment here. I would love to hear from you. Even if you have one title that you consider cinematic, I'd love to hear from you guys. Now, if you like this era of video games, you might be interested in my very first book I ever wrote. It came out in 2007. It's going to be celebrating its 20th anniversary in a couple of years. Hard to believe. The book is Classic Home Video Games 1972 through 1984, covering all the second-gen systems. Everything from the Adventure Vision to Bally Astrocade to Atari 2600 and 5200, ColecoVision and Television, all that great stuff. Even the Vectrex, guys, yes, all the second-gen systems. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Thank you for liking. Thank you for subscribing. And we'll talk to you in another video. Talk to you later.